Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Views and News and I'm Faisal Rehman live from our Islamabad studios. Today we'll be talking about Pak-China economic ties. And furthermore, the role of BRI and in particular the role of CPEC. Now obviously when we talk about various phases of CPEC, where do we stand as we speak? What are the major projects that will be looked after in the future? How much have we already completed? How many jobs have been generated? Is it only about the road or the pipeline or perhaps about the infrastructure? Because we also end up hearing that this is going to not only create a lot of jobs in the local market, but perhaps agriculture, that is another very important but yet a declining area, where once we used to have about 28 to 29% share of agriculture, now it's reduced to 21%. Pakistan was an exporting country. Now we have become an importing country as far as grains are concerned. 80% of your pulses are imported. Now we are looking at importing another 3 to 4 million tons of wheat from Russia and Ukraine in particular. Now, when we talk about these important factors, how to move forward now, how to have a comprehensive plan as far as your economy is concerned, that is not only going to look after the general infrastructure, but an overall, I would say, area where perhaps you talk about education, you talk about the training of the labor, you talk about enhancing their productivity, you talk about more skill management programs, you talk about, again, agriculture, how to increase the per acre yield, and then obviously building up of bridges and roads, and so on and so forth. How can Pakistan benefit? Because so far we generally perceive that this is more or less about linkage from China all the way to Gwadar, and there are going to be various economic zones, there are going to be various areas where certain companies will be facilitated, manufacturing will start happening in Pakistan, and perhaps some of the businesses will be transferred to Pakistan from China. So this is going to be something which will be made in Pakistan with the help of the Chinese, and you can export. Export processing zones, again, a very important factor is there. But where do we stand as we speak? What about the energy? Because energy is another very important area where the Chinese are really helping. They have been able to support Pakistan in the atomic energy area. They have also supported in the coal generation. You talk about hydel projects. The Chinese, they have mastered the art, and I think one of the most, I would say, leading countries in the world. Now, before I introduce you to our panelists, our production team has prepared a report. Let's watch that first, and after that, we'll be talking about the CPEC and BRI at length.
75th Independence Day of Pakistan has remained quite remedial in terms of Pakistan's diplomatic relations, specifically in terms of relations with the United States and China, where United States, while congratulating Pakistan on 75th Independence Day, reaffirmed to enhance the sustainable and constructive growth in the relations with Pakistan on this special occasion of 75th Independence Day. China's Global Times exclusively interviewed Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, in which wide-ranging topics encompassing China-Pakistan relations, China-Pakistan economic corridor, and the upcoming 20th National Congress of the Communist Party of China were covered. In this interview, Prime Minister said that Pakistan Economic Corridor is laying foundation for sustained indigenous economic modernization. He added that over past 10 years, the construction of the CPEC has helped Pakistan reduce the bottlenecks caused by the power shortages and weak infrastructure. The Prime Minister asserted that Pakistan will continue to work closely with China to enhance the momentum of cooperation between the two countries. The Prime Minister said that public policy transformation from geopolitics to geoeconomics represents a consensus that we should realize the potential to accelerate our development. While appreciating Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, spokesperson for Chinese Foreign Ministry said that China appreciates the care and efforts from Shehbaz Sharif on practical cooperation between the two countries. Wang Wenmin added that CPEC is an economic initiative and is conducive to promoting regional connectivity, peace, stability, and development.
Now to talk about it, we have with us in our studio, on my right is Shakeel Ramay, senior economist, author and an expert on CPEC. Thank you very much, Ramay, for your time. And we'll be talking to Dr. Ali Hasanain. He's an Associate Professor of Economics, LUMS. Thank you very much, Ali, for your time as well. It's a pleasure to have you on the program. And on the telephone, we'll be talking to Dr. Salman Shah, former Finance Minister and an expert on the financial issues and matters. Now, let me put the first question to you, Ramay Saab. China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, CPEC, and then we talk about the overall investment that has been put in. And primarily, if you ask anybody, since we developed an authority also, if you remember CPEC authority, and looking after the law and order and security side, because there were a lot of challenges on that front also. But despite all odds, the Chinese were fantastic along with the Pakistanis to in fact come up with a plan, and then they started implementing. Now, sir, when we talk about various phases, generally what is perceived is that they are building up roads, bridges, infrastructure, and perhaps a huge motorway kind of a concept all the way from Kashgar to Gwadar. And then there will be certain areas which will be allocated for the export processing zones or perhaps for similar activities. How much has been completed so far? And where exactly do we stand as we speak?
Thank you, Faisal. I think we have covered a long distance. For example, energy. If we talk first, we will talk about the infrastructure. Energy. So, in 2015, we were losing $4 to $5 billion due to the electricity load shedding. Now we have overcome the problem we are facing right now. This is due to the oil crisis in the international market and transmission system of Pakistan. Although China State did cooperation, they have laid down the one of the transmission line. They have given us the opportunity to improve it. Then on the road infrastructure, so we have built so many motorways. You can talk about a lot of. Then we also built Gwadar Port, the major, you can say, the jewel of the crown of CPEC. So we built that. Now we are entering into the second phase. Infrastructure was required to bring the business. Importance infrastructure, I can give you one example, you can consider yourself. When America and USA and China was fighting a trade war during the Trump era, Trump asked the Chinese company, American company to shift somewhere from China. They did not, because they could not get the better infrastructure than China anywhere in the world. So infrastructure is a key. That has been laid down, what the Prime Minister has said.
Okay.
Infrastructure has been laid down. So remaining is being complete in the next year, 2023. Our energy projects around about 10,000 to 11,000 megawatt will be completed. Right now we have approached the number of 7,000, including the clean energy, like the Crore Hydro Park, and then the Qaid-e-Azam Solar Park, then the Daud windmill and other windmills and these things. Now we are entering the second phase. Second phase was designed for basically, if we look at two things that are on the primary in the second phase. Number one, special economic zones to build the industrial base of country. Number two, diversification of industry. Right now, if we look at more than 65% of our exports are the textile.
Absolutely.
If we look at, we say the Americans is one of the biggest our export market. You look at more than 85% is textile products. No diversification.
So product diversification.
Diversification.
Got it.
Number two, then we went to go for the agriculture cooperation. Because agriculture sector, we have the lowest productivity. Pakistan fall among the country which have the lowest agriculture productivity.
Per acre yield.
Per acre yield. On top of that, we are facing the problem of climate change. We had food insecurity in 2013-14. 58.8% population was food insecure in the country. Almost 60%. That's why we have written the paper and we did the whole survey of Pakistan.
All right.
So these are the two primary drivers along skill development. That China has given
human
us
resource development basically.
Human resource, the skill developments basically. So China have given us more than $1.1 billion for the social development, and from that the huge chunk has been dedicated for the skill development. Because for industrialization you need skilled labor force. You cannot use the raw labor force. But here is also a problem. Also we have the collaboration in the technology for the fourth industrial revolution. Science and technology cooperation. But the real problem is here we are still stuck with the special economic zones. Why? Because our policy makers, they are stuck in the first phase of the CPEC, and the second phase of CPEC is different. First phase of CPEC was all about government to government or government to business. From there the government and here government, they are working together. Or from there the the business group, here go Pakistan is a business government. Look at the motorways, energy projects, everything. But second phase is all about the business and private sector, because government is not involved in the industries or something like agriculture, these things. It's a business to business. When business comes, the whole dynamics change.
B2B, that would
B2B, the whole dynamics change. How? For example, if some company have to come in Pakistan registered, they will have to deal with the 7 different types of agencies. And the worst part is that you have Federal Board of Revenue for the tax registration, and then you have the regional office for the tax registration. And then there is 35 different types of the tax agencies which they have to deal with. And some policy of one province may be different than other province.
absolutely.
Plus, you have required minimum 113 days to get the electricity connection, that you can connect in UAE in 7 days. And that is only written 113 days. But they
In reality, it could go up to 200.
Yes, because one of my friend from the industry is very influential. He was telling me they have to wait for 2 years to get the connection. He is very influential.
And and the meter is on, your cost.
One thing, and second thing,
still going up, right?
Second thing, when they are coming here, they have to deal number of other organizations. But government say
So red tape.
For that purpose, Pakistan need a centralized strong body where some person come and get all the facilitations, like CPEC authority.
One window operation.
It's like one, I say that one roof, because you have to bring the different departments on that, like the CPEC authority. And if you look at that, how the world special economic zones succeeded in the past, you will find from the successful special economic zones, 94% were those special economic zones which adopted innovative policies. Because special means you have to give the special treatment. If they are the run of the mill, but you don't need to call them the special economic zones. Then you can say industrial cooperation, private sector cooperation. One thing, and second thing, I give you a concrete example. India started to establish special economic zones even before China. Look at the size of Indian economy and Chinese economy. Because Indian economy structure or bureaucracy or other things are like Pakistan. Keep revolving, keep revolving, keep revolving. But the Chinese have different system. They gave the authority to the district government to take certain decisions for the special economic zones. They don't need to go through the process to top.
This is what
here
the
in Pakistan,
yes?
what is happening in Pakistan? The government is not, this government is not ready to listen to the CPEC authority justification. Even today they say we are considering to abolish it. But they are not in a look. Faisal, one example. In any ministry, when there is a big project, what they do? They build a project management unit. Why? PMU. Why? Because they want the smooth functioning of that project.
Exactly. No hindrances.
This is the biggest program of Pakistan, and you are treating them like one day they have to deal with Board of Investment, other day the Energy Ministry, other day they have to do with the WABDA, then tax agencies, then you are making them to run around. And the basic problem is that government is not understanding they need a strong CPEC authority.
Totally focusing on this particular
Totally
project.
focusing, but with power to making a decision and to implement. Because last time what we have right now, CPEC authority, that is only facilitation center. Although it played a good role in the previous government, but we need a strong centralized body with implementation power. Otherwise, I will only 1 second, because otherwise they say kill them. No, our minister, one minister say no. They are a tug of war among the ministries. Every ministry portray like that they are the champion of CPEC. And they want to show it like that, without their ministry nothing is possible, or their department nothing is possible.
So that element of synergy is missing?
Synergy is missing, and tug of war, the championship. One thing, and second, no ministry in Pakistan have the power over other ministry to dictate that ministry. They will say, who are you? I am the minister of that ministry. That's why we need a strong centralized body with the name of CPEC authority.
There you go, sir. Very brilliantly explained. Now coming to you, Dr. Ali Hasanain. Now obviously, sir, we have been hearing about the CPEC for a very long time. Whether we talk about the government of Mr. Mohammad Nawaz Sharif when he came into power in 2013. Everything, I remember SN Iqbal Saab used to always talk about the CPEC and the fruits that we will eventually have once it's completed. Now, sir, people are still hopeful that one fine morning they'll listen that now the CPEC has started paying Pakistan. Initial investment was huge, unbelievable, the highest ever in Pakistan for one single country. But now, sir, there are issues, there are problems. Though today the Prime Minister also said that, you know, we need to shift from politics to geo-economics. How far are we from that particular concept, sir? How long will it take to you know, basically see visibly the positive outcome of the CPEC project? And in particular, when we talk about BRI, everybody says that if BRI is the overall body, CPEC is the heart. Your take, sir.
So first of all, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, thank you for having me. I think first of all, in Pakistan, we have seriously misunderstood CPEC. We haven't debated it nearly as much as we should have. And we have fundamentally misunderstood both how to run the economy and also how to run CPEC. So for context, the British decision to leave the European Union, or Brexit, had an impact of somewhere between 2 to 3% on the UK economy. And you will remember that it was debated and, you know, much was written. Acres of papers were expended on writing about the particular details of that project. For the given scale of Pakistan's economy, the potential impact of CPEC is 10 times more than the impact of Brexit on the UK. And yet, what happened at that time was that at some point, the Chinese decided to establish the Belt and Road Initiative. And given the sort of close ties that we've enjoyed with them in the past, they came to Pakistan with the idea of CPEC. We signed on, we immediately labeled it a game changer, and that was more or less the end of the conversation. We haven't really had detailed discussions of the particular configuration of CPEC, whether particular projects were wise to be undertaken or not, and so on. So my first problem with the whole agenda of CPEC has been that we've had fundamental misdiagnosis of how to establish better trade with China. And I think if you want to really think about trade with China, you have to first contextualize Pakistan's trade in the last 20 years, or Pakistan's economy in the last 20 years. Because without understanding what's happening in the Pakistan economy, CPEC, you know, exports to China last year were about less than 10% of Pakistan's total exports. So we have to really consider the entire economy as we go. So to give you the highlights on that, Pakistan's exports as a percentage of our GDP has fallen from 16% 10 years ago to about 10%. Our manufacturing, the index of manufacturing complexity in Pakistan has decreased. Our share of world trade has decreased. The number of products that we are exporting has decreased by more than 100. There are more than 100 products that we used to export that we are no longer exporting. And there's really a missing conversation in Pakistan on why that is happening. And to think that we can figure out CPEC based on specific projects without understanding the institutional problems or the fundamental problems that are sort of keeping our economy tied down is, to my mind, not a very positive way to go about it. If you then think about what has happened in the last few years, Pakistan's economic planners seriously misdiagnosed how CPEC was going to go. So in 2017, official Pakistani economist estimates were that that 4% of global trade will pass through the CPEC route by 2020. And even if you give them 2 years margin for COVID, and even if you sort of account for the fact that China has really locked down the economy and they're growing far less than projections, we have not gone anywhere near that. part of that is the conversation that Ramay Saab has started about sort of special economic zones, about how to encourage exports and so on. That's been missing in Pakistani society in general.
All right. Now, we've also been joined in by Dr. Salman Shah, the former finance minister. Dr. Saab, Assalamu alaikum.
Ji, walaikum assalam.
Good to have you in the program, Dr. Saab. Dr. Saab, I remember when Nawaz Sharif Saab took charge as the third Prime Minister in 2013, obviously Pakistan and China always enjoyed good ties, whosoever is in the government, but this is a very strategic alliance, I would say. What we heard that around 2.5 billion people will get benefit from this, and this is going to be a game changer for the region. And when we talk about Pakistan, the CPEC idea is going to be so brilliant that perhaps we will be having people coming in from various other countries to work in Pakistan. The economy is going to go up. Everything is going to be just perfect, more or less like Malaysia or somewhat. Now, sir, when we talk about the game changer CPEC, let's talk about two very major aspects, sir. Do you think we are on the right track? If so, why haven't we still been able to achieve the real benefit, the real fruit hasn't been tasted so far? And secondly, when we talk about the hindrances or the hurdles, one is the macro environmental factors, the pressure from America and other states for that matter. Second is our own wrongdoings. Let's throw light on these particular issues, Dr. Saab.
Well, I think this is a project. If we call CPEC a project, I think it's much bigger than a project. It's a whole idea. It is something which will definitely happen. I mean, it is the dictate of the geography of this area. And therefore, Pakistan's role in connecting Eurasia with the Arabian Sea is a natural. Now the question is, when will we be able to see real progress on it? And I think that's where geopolitics comes into it. For a very long time, you mentioned from 2013, CPEC it was called CPEC, but prior to that, Gwadar project was built by General Musharraf, and the whole idea was started even prior to that. But then the situation in Afghanistan, the war on terror, and following that, the geopolitics between America and China, this is all becoming a hurdle. But at the same time, I think things are moving in a direction in which this corridor would really truly become a global corridor, because with the end of the Afghan war, and I think if the superpower rivalry takes a little bit of a pause, we may see this whole region of Central Asia and Western China and South Asia. This is the least connected and the least integrated, economically integrated region of the world. In fact, it's the last major area which has not been integrated the way we see integration in Southeast Asia. We haven't seen that happening yet in Western Asia. And the time is right. But we need leadership. I think we need leadership in Pakistan. We need leadership of China, America, Central Asian states, Turkey, Iran. All of them have to come and work on this to make it a success. We already have ECO, which is the Economic Cooperation Organization, which has all the protocols, and it is the whole region has been envisioned to be a free trade area. I think it's time we really make that happen. And for that, we need a global kind of an understanding that, yes, this area is going to be an area of peace and cooperation, and we can develop this area. This area is very rich. This area has got a billion plus population. It has energy resources. It has mineral resources. It has tourism opportunities, people-to-people contact. Sky is the limit.
So
And
that is
so
an
I think,
ideal case scenario. Dr. Saab, if I may put a question here, I remember...
no, it's not an ideal case scenario. I think it is a natural scenario. I think that's
All
a
right.
natural scenario which has to happen as soon as we get the kind of leadership in the region which is willing to sign on, and then I think this will take shape. Remember,
Now, Dr. Saab,
remember ASEAN came after the end of the Vietnam War, and that whole region was devastated by war. But after Vietnam War, ASEAN took off. So I think we should learn from that experience, and that's what I think we need in Afghanistan, and the peace in Afghanistan should then graduate into integrating this whole region into an economic zone. And that I think will be very beneficial for us and for the world.
provided it is done the way we all wish that it should be done. Now, Dr. Saab, couple of questions. I remember when Mr. Rouhani, the Iranian president, visited Pakistan, I still remember he issued a very important and very interesting statement, and he said, like, Chabahar is going to complement Gwadar. They won't be rivals, number one. Now, sir, when we hear that most likely this P5+1 formula might work out in the near future, things have almost been settled. I was watching it last night on CNN. For example, there is a deal done between the West and the Iranians, and perhaps most of these sanctions are removed, number one. And secondly, sir, when we hear about $400 billion worth of the Chinese investment pouring into Iran, I happened to talk to one of the journalists in a recent program, and he said, you will not believe the kind of roads the Chinese have built in Iran. I mean, Iran always had a great infrastructure, but just imagine from their perspective, they're still surprised what Chinese have done there. And remember, sir, it's $400 billion in the next 25 years, and 25 years is a matter of a generation and a half. Sir, in that particular scenario, do you think we have done enough homework to bring Gwadar to that level that, you know, tomorrow, even if there is a challenge from the ports like Dubai or, for example, the kind of Indian interest that we have seen in the Chabahar project, don't you think, sir, we need to really work on war footings now?
Yeah, you know, I think that every port has hinterland, and it has a natural hinterland. And for Pakistani ports, both Karachi and Gwadar, the hinterland stretches all the way into Western China, Central Asia, and even up to Russia and the entire Eurasian landmass. Now, I think there is not one port, but there can be several ports. If you look at European ports, you have all kinds of ports over there serving that hinterland. So I think that we need peace in this region, and then the dividends really come at a later stage. So you have to have a vision, you have to have commitment. And since Pakistan is member of ECO, Pakistan is member of SCO, and Pakistan was originally affiliated with Iran and Turkey, I think that the time is now right that we start moving in that direction and start integrating into the economies in our region. It is not going to happen overnight. It will need a lot of effort, a lot of work, and it will need almost a global level leadership. And I think it is doable. This region, we should try to make sure that it doesn't become a zone of rivalry between China and United States. And if it can become a zone of cooperation over here, they can have rivalry in the economic sense, but not in the political sense. And I think in that sense, this will be a win-win project for the entire world. So yes, I mean, we need to continue to doing the things right because of Our road network has improved considerably. I mean, CPEC has been very useful in that respect, with the building of Gwadar and the international airport over there, and connecting Gwadar to Karachi through highways, and then linking it up north with international standard highways. It also helps to improve the economy in Pakistan.
All right. All right.
And of course, the returns are a bit longer term, and I think that we should realize it will not happen overnight, but it has to happen, because that is the gift of geography here, and it will ultimately translate into reality.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Saab, for your input, for your comments. Now, coming to you, Ramay Saab, when we talk about United States of America, sir, whether we like it or we don't, at the end of the day, United States of America is a reality. Biggest economy in the world, definitely the most powerful country. They have their presence and they have their influence on each and every organization, starting from UN to the Security Council to you name it, and they're there. The West is what they control, and perhaps they have a lot of influence on Asia, on so many other countries, in the Middle East also. One major concern which I have, and I want to ask you this question, that's when the American president, whether it's a Republican or it's a Democrat, they have one agenda. Russia is their rivalry. They have engaged Russia in Ukraine, supporting the NATO and supporting Ukraine in general. The other adversary or the rival is China, whether you talk about the trade war or perhaps the visit of Nancy Pelosi, and then after a few days we see 5 of the lawmakers from United States of America visiting Taiwan, despite a lot of hue and cry made by the Chinese. And on top, this issue has been ignited now. Now, the question is, sir, that if 2 of the major adversaries of the United States of America, containment of China is a policy and they want India to be a part of it, and they are using India. In this case, sir, China wants to enter Pakistan through CPEC and start trading and looking after their affairs and their concerns. This strategic interests should be safeguarded as well, and Pakistan is a very important ally. You talk about that, eventually we will be looking up into the Central Asian area, and furthermore is Russia. So 2 major adversaries. Americans would never like that to happen, sir. Don't you think this is going to be the major challenge politically and otherwise for Pakistan, sir?
Look, Faisal, if we compare China and US in the political and the diplomatic or economic terms, so I think the time has come where China has challenged, rather they have surprised in some areas. For example, from the Taiwan visit of Nancy Pelosi, 181 countries supported China, not America. They opposed America. That is a huge number. From 193 members of UN, you have 181 countries supporting your stance. One thing. Second, China is not a Russia, because at that time USSR, they have 3 different things they were doing. Number 1, so they were not engaged in a global chain, in a global system. China is deeply integrated in the global system. 121 countries or 131 countries, China is the largest trade partner. China has made 146 countries the member of BRI. So China is deeply engaged in the system. So it is not only China, it's a global economy now. Second, Russia and Americans, they were doing to export their models at that time, communism and capitalism. China is not in this race. Third, Russia was more concentrated on the state security. China is concerned about the people's welfare. So they have the limitation, and US know it very well. They know it, they cannot compete them now Chinese system in the economy. They have one edge right now, but that is also, some experts believe that has been gone. There is a military edge, because if you look at the spending by US, more than $860 billion US dollar, and less than 1/3 of that is China is spending. But China in artificial warfare, artificial intelligence warfare, and some DF 117 and 41, they are so they are doing very well. So real problem is small economies like us, because on one side we are heavily indebted to Western institutions.
Absolutely, IMF and so forth.
So
Yeah.
what they did with us, war 1.1 billion, they have made us just what we say in the Urdu, naak se lakirein niklai.
Yeah, that was stated by none other than our own Interior Minister Rana Sahab.
So they have leverage on us, but Pakistan can move ahead with that if Pakistan intelligently follow or wisely follow its policy. Right now, Pakistan should concentrate on our economy, because for US, they have openly declared it is not about geoeconomics anymore. It's a geopolitics, a geosecurity. They have given the push to the Europe to go against the Russia geosecurity preference. They are changing the gear according to their own, because they feel they have still advantage in that security domain. And that's why they're pushing for the geosecurity. We don't need to fall for that. We need to concentrate on our economy. And for that purpose we need, and last thing I want to say about, CPEC is not a hip hazard program. CPEC is very well designed program. Even our late ambassador Akram Zaki Sahab, he used to say that when they were building Crocram, they have decided they will go for the CPEC like activity economic program. That's why in 1989 Pakistan and China signed bilateral trade, safeguarding bilateral trade and investment till 2010. So there was a $15 billion investment from China, Chinese companies. And on top of that, if you look at the 2003 Beijing declaration between President President Musharraf and President Hu Jintao, you will find each and every bit of the CPEC. In 2006 we signed Agri Cooperation Agreement, Energy Cooperation Agreement. In 2003 declaration you will find each and every subject which we have included in CPEC. So it's very, but the real problem with us is we are not moving in implementation and we are not ready to diversify. Are
these the bureaucratic hurdles?
Bureaucratic and business hurdles, because our businessmen, they are used to get an order like a contractor on the textile and fulfill the contract and finish the product. No, they need to look for the supply chain inclusion. But unfortunately our planning minister, they were saying we are bringing in the 60 brands. For God's sake, we are not in that position we can introduce brand at this stage of the time. First we need to do
of the later stage, yes.
Look for the opportunity for inclusion in the supply chain, and we have the best opportunity. We can ask to the China, look, you are making the computer laptops, give us the keyboard making here in Pakistan. You are making the vehicle, give us nut bolts, we can make it here. Look at the scale they are producing. If you have the orders, you will look.
So look at Taiwan, the way they are producing those little chips, and at
So
the end of the day, the whole world is
we
dependent
are
on
not
them.
implementing it. It's a true spirit. We have to create, and we have, if we talk about the linkages, what we are doing for the linkages. We are talking about Central Asia. Is Afghanistan is secure yet? There is enough other opportunity through the Xinjiang. We can connect to the Central Asia, but we don't talk it. We say, oh, Xinjiang, there is nothing. Xinjiang has changed. More than 85% trade of China with the Euro-Asia is being done through the Xinjiang region, because that is the bordering area.
Absolutely, I totally agree. Sir, now taking the same point to our guest on Skype, Dr. Ali Hasanain Sahab. Now, the shift from geostrategy to geoeconomics is our public policy, and we always talk about it, consensus to leverage our potential to fast track the process of development and growth. Now the welfare of the people, number one, and making Pakistan self-reliant remain the core point of our development strategy, sir. Now how to do it? I mean, it's great to have everything in black and white, but the real issue is get it done, but how?
So I have much to debate or dispute with Ramay Sahab, but let me start by making a major point, which is that you cannot import development, you can't import economic growth, and you can't import good governance. Pakistan, throughout CPEC's life, has treated this as a windfall, something that we had all of our problems and China suddenly came in and China will solve our problems. This is not the way it works. I will strongly dispute the idea that CPEC was well designed on the Pakistani side. I just quoted to you Pakistani economists officially suggesting that 4% of global trade will pass through CPEC by 2020. Where is that 4%? Do we even have 1%? It was a very poorly designed project on the Pakistani side. I'll give you another example of that. We talk about special economic zones. Ramay Saab correctly identified the cost of doing business as a major impediment to exports. But have we even studied, have we gone and surveyed our exporters and asked what their major concerns are? Cost of doing business is, yes, a major aspect, but there are multiple other things. The first of which is macro instability. We've had, throughout CPEC's life, we've had terrible macro stability, right? And I don't need to tell your audience, to recap for your audience, how our macro stability picture has looked in this time. We've had a currency that has been undervalued at times and overvalued at times. And the reason is that we are not controlling our fiscal deficits, which is why we go to the IMF and to China. We're indebted also to China. To any country that we go for loans, we go because we're not keeping our house in order locally. We didn't design a realistic plan of how we would manage the debt that was created through the good infrastructure projects that we undertook. Maybe CPEC should have unfolded more slowly than it did, so that we would be able to manage our debt position better. That's something that was never debated. We don't really have a sufficient number of economists in this country who can debate these issues. So when we talk about the special economic zone, what is a special economic zone? A special economic zone is a place where you're saying the problems of the rest of the country won't apply to you. Exactly. Well, this made sense in China. If you look at China's history,
it has a special status, obviously.
Yes, China was a communist country that decided to experiment with capitalism. For Pakistan, that circumstance didn't apply. What exactly is the purpose of a special economic zone? Ramay Saab talked about your project management units. The history of project management units in reference to the CPEC authority. The history of project management units is very mixed if you look across countries historically. And the reason for that is that it varies by with respect to what type of institutions you have in place to begin with. So this idea that we will have an authority that will take existing problems that we have in our existing governance and circumnavigate them for the Chinese, how will that work exactly?
All right, sir. So I'm so sorry to cut you here, sir. We're totally running out of time. But thank you very much for your input. And I would like to say thank you very much to Ramay Saab for his comments as well. And I would also like to thank Dr. Salman Shah Saab, the former finance minister, for his presence in our program too. So that's all we have for this hour. Inshallah, I'll see you on Monday. Till then, you take good care of yourself. Have a great weekend. Khuda Hafiz.